He's a PhD history professor of African Studies and has done extensive work in the African continent. Professor, you're welcome, and we recognize the extensive work you've done in archiving much of our history and the curation you've done in these particular exhibitions. We welcome you to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Your Excellency, honorable ministers and distinguished guests, it's a great pleasure to stand here on behalf of my colleagues, Dr. Kanakwa, Dr. David Ngendo Chimba, and Dr. Taylor, all of whom are co-curators with me in this important exhibition. Your Excellency, it's never been a better time to be a historian of Uganda than it is right now. Thanks to the work that your members of the government institutions across the spectrum in university life, in the Ministry of Public Service, in the Uganda Broadcasting Corporation, and at the university, there's a great deal of work happening right now to conserve and pass on the archival legacies of Uganda's history to the future. Let me highlight for you, Your Excellency, the relationship between this exhibition on the one hand and the archive work that gives rise to it on the other. The roots of this exhibition lie, at least to some extent, in 2005, when the Mountains of the Moon University in Fort Portal first took on the task of conserving, inventorying, and later digitizing the district archives in Kabarole and later in Hoima. Over the course of more than 10 years of work, Mountains of the Moon University has managed to digitize over 500,000 documents, which reside exclusively in the hands of FMU staff and are used by students and faculty for research into Western Uganda's history. Your Excellency, I'm happy to say that it's the largest digitized archive of government documents in Africa, and it's a great credit to Honorable Butime, to Professor Rugumayo, and to others at MMU who have acted as custodians of this important archive over the course of the past decade. So thank you to Honorable Butime and to the MMU staff. You'll see as you go through the whole exhibition into the exhibition hall that we've used the MMU archives a lot in that exhibition. MMU has given us lots of material to work with, both about Western Uganda and about Uganda more generally. So particularly pay attention to the parts of the exhibition that come from Toro. I point out also the role that since 2006, the Uganda National Records Center and Archives has played in conserving government records here in Kampala. I'm happy to say that under the direction of the Commissioner, Lillian Ariso, and under the custodianship of the acting National Archivist, Justine Nawoga, the UNRCA now sits in its hands in its new building in Wandagea are the ministerial records for a great number of important parts of Uganda's government. The UNRCA is doing a fantastic job of acting to preserve documents that otherwise would be lost. And I think we all owe them a great deal of thanks for taking on a difficult job. So thank you to Justine, who's here. And you'll see that the UNRCA's information is likewise informed the way we've composed the exhibition. Makerere University Library, under the direction of Dr. Helen Byamugisha and her staff, have been avidly conserving the newspaper records and also the government documents for Buganda since the 1960s. The newspaper archive of Makerere University Library is an unmatched resource for the history of journalism, not only in Uganda, but across East Africa. And thanks to Monica Naluwoza and others who work at the library, we've been able now to bring into this exhibition a great amount of newspaper material, not only the material that you saw just now, Your Excellency, but there's lots more in the exhibition hall that comes from Makerere. So thank you to Dr. Byamugisha and her staff who are here as well. And let me finally end by, well, not quite end, but let me also highlight the role that the Uganda Broadcasting Corporation has played in conserving the photographic and media archives of Uganda. With the direction first of Mr. Simon Kahero and board chairman now, James Tumusime, and under the management of Maurice Mugisha and MD Winston Agaba, UBC has been working with my university in Michigan and with the University of Western Australia to ensure that the photographs made by the Ministry of Information in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s are digitized, preserved, and handed on to the future. Your Excellency, we've digitized thus far about 50,000 photographic negatives that had previously lived in a very obscure filing cabinet in a corner of a storage room at UBC. And we're working now to ensure that the cinematic archives and the radio archives are likewise handed on to new media where they can be used to inform Uganda's public about the history of this country. The UBC archive is publicly available and under the management of UBC staff. And I'm happy to say that Dean Chibidige and Malachi Kabale, the archivists, are here today. And I'll end this bit of the program by thanking the museum. I've been working with the museum myself since 2016, particularly first with the commissioner, Rose Nkale, and latterly with the acting commissioner, Jackie Nyirachiza, who've been faithful custodians of this important collection, this important institution, and have now, with the help of the University of Michigan and the University of Western Australia, and with the help of Makerere, been able to lay on 2 exhibitions. The first, in 2019-2020, concerned the photo archive of Idi Amin. That photographic exhibition was here in Kampala for most of a year. We moved it then to Soroti and Arua. And now we've launched a second exhibition out of this cooperation between UBC and the Uganda Museum. Uganda at 60 will be on show until the end of this year, and we encourage the Ugandan public to come and learn about Uganda's past. I'd like to end by simply handing over to Your Excellency, if I may, a book that arises out of the first exhibition we did together. The Unseen Archive of Idi Amin has just been published. It represents the photographic record of the exhibition we did here at the museum between the Uganda Broadcasting Corporation, the University of Michigan, the University of Western Australia, and the Uganda Museum. We want to present a copy of this book to you, Your Excellency, and with me to make the presentation will be Mr. Winston Agaba, the Managing Director of UBC.
Thank you so much, Professor Derek Patterson, for bringing to context the importance of today. And we thank you so much for the great work you're doing in archiving and also digitizing part of our history in collaboration with the many agencies that we do have. Allow me to remind members that we're still in very difficult times, so we do encourage you to mask up as we interact. It is quite important. At this point in time, ladies and gentlemen, allow me now to invite the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities, Madame Doreen Katsime. Panel is what is that? I have been guided that there is a slight change in the program. We'll start with the panel discussion. We eagerly are waiting to hear from our senior colleagues to tell us more on how it was during that time. In this respect, allow me to invite Mr. Morris Mugisha, who is going to engage the panel in a very interesting but short discussion recollecting what happened during that time. Mr. Morris Mugisha, you're most welcome.
Present, sir. Your Excellency, President Yoweri Museveni, and all protocol observed, it gives us a great pleasure, the Uganda Broadcasting Corporation, to be part of this history, Uganda at 60, and in our way contribute in providing the photos and some of the footage that the museum has been using since 2018. Your Excellency, my panel of eminent persons was introduced, and I was given a very difficult task in 30 minutes to speak to people who have a wealth of information and history, and we'll try and work within the minutes that we've been provided. My panel of eminent persons will be looking at the memories of independence, and they will be speaking to three critical areas. Their story around Independence Day or the run-up to independence, and their own contribution in their various capacities into Uganda's history. And finally, Your Excellency, some of them have individual stories, of course, Mama Miria, and of course, the best man who has been already introduced, who will be speaking to that very special occasion in our history. So allow me, Your Excellency, begin with Dr. Charles Oren, who was among that first A-level class of Uganda outside Makerere then. That was the pioneering class of independence medical students at Mulago. And he will be sharing with us their story as students at that time, his experience on Independence Day, and of course, hearing their historical mission as post-independence state of Uganda was taking shape, and their contribution as the medical fraternity. You're welcome, Doctor, to share your story.
Thank you, panel chair. Your Excellency, I'm going to share with the group here the memories of independence. In 1890, was extended beyond the border.
Uganda, the time is here to celebrate like never before. MTN and Talent Africa present Afro Palooza. Independence weekend, 8th to 9th of October, featuring over 60 artists in a 2-day celebration of Uganda, including Rama, Maddox, Sauti Soul, Zex Bilanji, Chanzi Band, Cindy, Winnie Nwaji, Vinka, Maurice Curie, and a lot more. That's not all. Arts and culture showcases, business expos, culinary experience. Yes, come get a taste of Uganda. Afropalooza is proudly brought to you by Talent Africa, Jameson, Now Special, Stanbic Bank, and MTN. Afropalooza, celebrating the Pearl of Africa.
My name is Charles Peter Maiga, the Katikiro of Buganda. It's very important to groom and nurture children into responsible citizens. But that doesn't mean that we've got to beat them up, got to hurt them. I think we need to groom our children into people who have self-worth. That will enable us to have citizens who will be responsible and who will also look at violence with disdain.
Because a violence-free childhood is everyone's right. Raising voices.
Sharing memories of independence. One of the representatives of the presenters today is Dr. Martin Alika, and I wish to share with you my first contacts with him in 1961. There were 3 secondary schools in Uganda that started higher school certificate courses in Uganda. These were King's College Budo, St. Mary's College Kisubi, and an Indian school in Mbale. I completed my higher school certificate at St. Mary's College Kisubi, and I was admitted to Makerere Medical School in 1961. I also obtained a full government scholarship to go to Guy's Hospital in London to study dentistry. The Ministry of Education recommended 2 dentists in Uganda to help me make the right choice. The 2 were doctor in charge of dentistry practice in Eastern Uganda, based in Jinja, Dr. Fakwa, and Dr. Martin Alika, who had a private dental clinic in Kampala. Both strongly recommended that I should go to Guy's Hospital. Guy's Hospital was a very famous, world prestigious hospital, and they stressed that if you tell anybody that you studied at Guy's Hospital, everyone will take off their hat for you. My mother, in particular, was of the view that if I went to England at that age, I would end up marrying a Muzungu. The one person who helped me make the final decision was an old schoolmate, namely Dr. Raphael O'War. He was a 4th-year medical student at that time. He argued, if you become a dentist, that's the end of the road. If you become a doctor, the whole medical world opens its doors to you. He was absolutely right. After my internship, I was offered the opportunity to start the newly established Master of Medicine program at Makerere in 1969. My dissertation was on adult Hodgkin's disease in Uganda. After my Master of Medicine, I spent 3 months at Karolinska Institute, Stockholm, studying laboratory medicine. After that, I spent 2 years at the National Cancer Institute in Bethesda, Maryland. I was asked to return before I completed my fellowship training. In 1973, I received a hand-delivered letter from Dr. Charles Vogel stating, if you do not return now, you will find nothing to return to. I heeded his advice and returned to Uganda in 1973. I was head of the Uganda Cancer Institute from 1973 to 1982. In 1982, I took my sabbatical leave and went to the WHO Tropical Disease Research Center in Ndola, Zambia. One of the articles I published while in Ndola was an article on adult cerebral malaria in Zambia. In 1983, I moved from Ndola to the University of Zimbabwe and established the Harare Cancer Registry, which is one of the 5 African cancer registries mentioned in the 3-volume book titled Cancer in 5 Continents. In 1986, I moved to Adelaide, South Australia, to start a medical oncology unit at the Royal Adelaide Hospital in South Australia. In 1990, I moved to Canada as a founding co-director of Quality of Life Center in Cancer Care in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Professor O'War was very right. Medicine opened my eyes, opened the doors to me in several fields of scientific interest. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Charles Oren. I'll now turn to retired Bishop Baker Ochola. I want you to also share with us, for starters, especially for the young people watching us today, your experience under colonial government, where you were on Independence Day, but also specifically speaking to our brothers who are north of the Karuma Bridge, how the celebrations of independence were received in northern Uganda, and finally, if you can, your relationship with Dr. Milton Obote.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, I was a young man, a teacher by then in Gulu. Independence came when Uganda was very excited to get away from the British colonial era by the British in Uganda. So we were very excited at that time as a young man. I celebrated the Independence Day in Gulu, and people were very, very, very much excited. To Maria Obote in Buganda here, that brought Uganda Second World War ended abruptly in 1945. The people of Alu said, they refused to bring back the second school to Gulu up to now. That was our experience. We had a lot of problems with the British. So when independence came, so many senior secondary schools were open in Gulu, including Sir Samuel Baker School, which was the only school given by the British government as junior secondary school, later as secondary school. Later, when the government took power, we were the target. The Acholi and the Lengi were the target. Different departments and ministries, and so many people ran away, including Dr. Alike went to Kenya. So many people went to Kenya. I escaped very narrowly because the Archbishop was killed, and Bishop Dr. Ben Ogwalabuang also escaped very narrowly when Bishop Kiangire helped him to escape from the country. I was in Zaire with my wife and the children for 3 years until Amin was overthrown. When I came back, I went back to Gulu as the Dacian secretary, and later went to Canada to do my Bachelor of Theology in the University of Saskatchewan in Canada. When I came back later, I found that the government was also overthrown again. I think this time by Museveni. And I could not go back to Gulu. So I stayed here in Busoga. Bishop people. On the day that I was consecrated, before that day, 2 people were killed on the way to Gulu. Then after my consecration, 11 people were killed at Acholibu on the way to Kampala. So we stayed there for 3 years. In 1997, my wife went to Agoro. She was the president of the Mothers Union. On her way back, she was blown into pieces by the LRA, by the LRA. She died together with a woman who was sitting next to her and somebody else who was sitting behind in the cabin of the car. 3 of them died instantly. I felt like a tree split from up to the bottom. So since that time, I've dedicated myself to work for peace in northern Uganda. I want to say thank you very much to His Excellency for standing with us during the hard time in northern Uganda. Actually, Religious Leaders Peace Initiative talked to the president about talking to the LRA. He agreed, but the hardliners in government and military never agreed never agreed with him. So most of the time, when we wanted to talk to the LRA, they would attack the venues of our meeting. So I want to say thank you very much, President, for standing with us together with the Salim Saleh, because Salim Saleh was the head of the presidential peace team. So we were able to have the Juba peace talks, but later it was destroyed by people who never agreed with the president. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, retired Bishop. And we wanted to also thank you very much for your contribution to peace building in northern Uganda. And as a Ugandan, and of course, as part of our community, we know what you've been doing in northern Uganda, and we're very grateful, retired Bishop. And may the Lord continue to bless you and give you more life. I'll now turn to the Honorable Joyce Mpanga. The Honorable Joyce Mpanga, in one of the photos curated in the museum, we see a very young, beautiful Joyce Mpanga, very smart at that time. But we wanted you to share the same story around where you are on Independence Day, what you remember about, living under the colonial government, your first meeting and your relationship with Dr. Milton Obote, and of course, finally, your story as one of the first legislators in the Legislative Council.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I don't know if I should start with my name. My name is Joyce Mpanga. At the time of independence, I was Joyce Masembe because I was not married. Later, I changed my name. I was in the very first class of girls who start for O-level at Gayaza High School, and I was lucky to be given a place at Makerere University, where I became the second woman to graduate with a BA London. And I also stayed on for postgraduate and became a teacher. At Independence Day, or before independence, I was very lucky because the governor nominated me. After election of 61, there was no woman who stood. Why? Because none of us, I think, felt bold enough to stand. The governor at that time nominated 3 of us to represent women. It was the late Sarah Antiro, she was still Sarah Nyandoha, Joyce Masembe, and I'm going to forget the name from Teso. We were only 3. So as a member of Legislative Council, I was lucky to be discussing reports that were made on which we were going to base our constitution. On this, I was lucky to be in Legislative Council when we changed from East African Common Services to what, I forget the name, I'm sorry. I also discussed that. I was also very lucky to be given a scholarship by the United States of America, a Fulbright scholarship. And I went to Bloomington, Indiana, and that made me the first woman to come back with a master's degree in Uganda. On the day of independence, just because I had been in legislative council, I was bitten by a political bug. And I very much wanted to be here on that day to see the Union Jack come down and our new flag go up. So I came back about 3 weeks before independence. You asked me when did I meet Obote. When I was nominated to become a member of Legislative Council, I was nominated on the side of the opposition, to which Honorable Obote was the leader. He was the UPC leader at independence. When there was no woman nominated, the governor asked the two leaders, Ben Chiwanuka and Dr. Obote, she was not a doctor yet, but she was Mr. Obote, to suggest names of women from which she could nominate people to represent women. I became that representative on the opposition side. Dr. Obote told me he put my name at the bottom of the list because he didn't know me. But since there were some Makerere people who had seen me, he asked me to be a shadow cabinet leader for education. I left Uganda and went to US to study for my master's degree. I came back 3 weeks before the Independence Day, and that's how I think Dr. Obote met my friend Miria. Miria had been a friend of mine from Gayaza High School. We were friends at Makerere University. Before I left for US, I sold my car. When I came back, I had no car, but she had a beautiful Volkswagen, which she put there to park while she was working in UEB. And because she was kind enough to lend me her car, I used it to go everywhere I wanted to go, and used to pick her up in the evening to go home. I wanted to be at each and every important occasion of independence, because I've told you I even hurried back just to be here. Mr. Honorable Chiria, the minister, I can't remember, he was minister, was the one who was giving out invitation cards. So I asked media to accompany me. I got to Mr. Chiria to look for cards for independence events. Little did I know that they had met media somewhere, and Obote had told Chiria, if that girl, if I meet her and she says yes, I'll go to Namirembe and ask them to open up and get us married, even if it's at night. So when I went to fetch the card, Chiria was very excited. I didn't know she was not excited to see me, but she was excited that I was with media they had seen somewhere. He took me to the legislative to Parliament. There is a bar there for a drink with the old members. And then he sent a little note to Mr. Obote that the girl we were looking for is here with Joyce. That's how I Amelia first met her husband. And from then on, Oh, he told me, I have a party at my house tonight. Why don't you come and join us? And I was excited to see the old members I had been in legislative council with. But I told him I don't go to a party alone. He said, bring in a number of friends. I think knowing I'll bring her as well. So that's how we met him. How they decided to get married, I think she's the one who should tell you. But how they met, I was one of the people, I was the person who brought them together.
Thank you very much, Honorable Joyce. The uniqueness about these stories is so enriching, and unfortunately we don't have so much time to delve into most of the detail. But allow me turn to Mama Mirio Bote. Yours will be rather unique because you will speak to us of the life before you got married to Dr. Milton Obote, and of course that very special day on the 9th of November 1963, when this grand event, national event, happened. Please do share your story, Mama Mirio Bote.
Maybe, sorry, I forgot to tell you where I was on that important day of 9th. I still had no car, but I had all the cards to all the events. So I went with my friend Miria to the celebration at Kololo. We sat together. We saw all the dignitaries coming in. We saw the Prime Minister coming in. We saw the Duke coming in, and the Kabaka also. And we witnessed the handing over of the independence instrument to Mr. Obote, but little did we know that he would become our husband. It was very exciting when the Union Jack, nearly at midnight, the Union Jack, the spotlight went on the Union Jack, and we saw it slowly coming down. And after that, the Uganda flag was slowly raised up. There was a lot of jubilation. People were clapping hands. They were shouting. At last, Uganda had become independent.
Your Excellency, all protocol observed. My name is Miria Nachito Kande Ndabizino Obote.
Microphone for Mama Mira We apologize for that.
Your Excellency, all protocol observed. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
My name is Miria Nachito Ndabyezino Kadule Obote. At the time of independence, I was a working young lady in town. I was working as the secretary to the chairman, Mr. David Fenton of Uganda Electricity Board. Before independence, just like today, there were many functions that took place before the actual day. I participated in some of them. There was a fashion show. There was an independence ball. What else? And there was something to do with the Red Cross. As a working lady in town, we had formed a group of young people to work with the Red Cross, especially during big functions. I remember I went to one of those functions as one of the Red Cross people, but I can't remember the exact function. Joyce, my friend, is the one who took me to the independence ceremonial grounds. We were all excited about that day, and indeed, it was a great moment when we saw the Union Jack, the British flag coming down, and the Uganda flag going up. It was indeed a very special occasion. When I got married in 1964, I was mainly a housewife, a mother, and a social worker. During those first few years, I was having my children and helped the Prime Minister. At that time, my husband was not the president. He was the Prime Minister. I helped him with what you expect a wife to do when visitors come home, when you have to attend functions with him. I had to do all that. But on top of that, I was a social worker. I was working with the women organizations, the children, Sanyu Babies Home, the disabled, like the Uganda Society for the Deaf, Uganda Society for the Blind, and other organizations. That's what I have been. I can't say I was not a politician. By the time I got married, I was not a politician. But I got involved in the politics when I became the wife of Mr. Apollo Milton Obote. I think that's enough for now.
For that, ladies and gentlemen. Finally, we want to come to Dr. Martin Alikay. Dr. Martin Alikay, similar question, speaking to where you are on Independence Day, your life under colonial rule, but specifically speaking to one event that Mama Maria has carefully stayed away from on this national event, the wedding day, the 9th of November. You played a very critical role as the best man of Dr. Apollo Milton Obote. You want to take us through that experience too. Doctor, you're welcome.
The president doesn't like the likes of us. He calls us or our parents or our fathers as colonial collaborators. But that's his own opinion. On Independence Day, I was living on the road parallel to Wampeo. So I just walked with my wife and some other friends I had invited for supper before walking up to the field. And there was a lot of excitement and people were very happy. But the Baganda were not happy because the Buganda declared independence from Uganda on the 31st of January 1961. The reason being that they didn't want a Mukupi to rule over them. That is Kiwaruka of the DP party. So to say that everybody was happy is not correct. There were some people who were not happy with independence at all. Secondly, I want to state here that if there is anybody who knows a single Ugandan who was shot by the British for clamoring for independence, I want to know who that person is. Because as far as I remember, there was nobody ever killed by the British gun for clamoring for independence. Finally, independence, if you met somebody on Kampala Road wearing shoes at the time, you looked, because there were no shoes for Africans. Africans didn't wear shoes. Servants all over the place walked barefoot. Places, King's College Budo was the only school that demanded shoes at that time. On Saturday morning, I would walk down Kampala Road. I would meet a girl. I don't know her. I've never seen her before. She's never seen me before. And I would say to her, "Kinavera warero." And she would say to me, "Mbwemburira." I am walking, I haven't stopped. She's walking, she hasn't stopped. That was Kampala in those days. Now, Milton Obote, I met him when I went to spend a holiday with my friend, Mr. Odu, who was the older son of Yakobo Adoko, wrote Adoko, the father of Akena Adoko. Obote, to me, was not corrupt, and there was no corruption in his time. We did a lot of things on for the good of the country. There was no give me this, or I won't do it. I won't do it for you. Obote had 3 houses. He had a house which is on Pala, where his family lives until today. He has a house. He had a house in Lira town, and a little house in Akokoro, where he is buried. So I met him in 1941. Now, Obote applied to come to Bodo. Had Obote come to Bodo, the history of this country would be different, because Obote would have met the Kabaka, and he would have met all the top Baganda, and he would have spoken Luganda. So my recollection of the man is that he saved me from going to jail, because there were people who said to him, if his brother is the Secretary General of Kabaka Yeka, that is my brother Daudi Ocheng, who was a very close friend of the Kabaka, he must be in cahoots. Therefore, get him. And Obote apparently said that would be crime by association. So I never went to jail. The other thing is, if you applied for a scholarship, and I was the chairman of the Central Scholarships Committee. We did not ask you to show us what religion you are, what school you went to, what tribe you were. We just looked at your papers, index number, and we gave you a scholarship. And at the time I was there, we had 5,000 students in the United Kingdom. And if you ask them, including Justice Kanye Hamba and many others who went to the UK at that time, did the committee ask you any question about tribe? The answer would be no. If he says yes, you tell him that I think he's a liar, because we never asked you what tribe you were. And we didn't get paid, by the way. We never got paid. We were doing it for the country. So that was my recollection of that day.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for our panelists, retired Bishop Ochola, Mama Mia, Honorable Joyce, Dr. Ren, and Dr. Martin Alike.
Allowed to say something about Miria. Miria, I think, met Milton in my house. Because those people going to Lechko from the north were so poor and they could not afford to go to drink in public places. So they would come to my house after Lechko, and my wife was young and used to run around with Miria, Kalule, Joyce, Masembe, Mrs. Sentongo, and one other girl whose name I forgot. She was a teacher in the Zambia police school. And Milton Obote proposed to Ms. Kalule. And the day he announced who the best man was going to be, there were many members of the cabinet present. And one of them, when my name was mentioned, instead of his name, he collapsed on the floor. And Miria was there. And I think it was Miria who asked Milton to ask me to be their chairman. When we left Namirembe, going to the Lugogo Stadium, Joyce Masembe ran down the backside to meet us, to wave to Miria. And I remember her saying, "Oh, Miria, Ugezi." Now, the government invited 2,000 people. Obote invited 1,800 people. And it was a big to-do. The brewers donated all the beer, So people drank. And one of the gentlemen was Dr. Kiwalanga, a very prominent surgeon at the time. He got so drunk, he fell into the gutter. He was from Masaka. And the next day, he was asked, "Do you remember anything?" He replied, Namanya. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, once again, put your hands together for our panel. Your Excellency, Dr. Martin Alike said, Dr. Bote, if Dr. Bote had gone to Budo, he probably would have learned some Luganda and met the Kabaka. And he went to another great school, Busoga College Mwiri, where myself and the managing director, UBC, went. And that is how he became Prime Minister and later President of Uganda. So I would probably think he may not have become president if he had gone to Budo. So, ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank you for your time. Apologies, we had to run over the time we had been provided. But I want to thank the panel. Over to you, Master of Ceremonies.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maurice, for that wonderful engagement with our dear panelists, distinguished panelists. It has been quite an exciting discussion, recollecting the memories of what happened then and partly how it progressed up to today. There was a tint of romanticism during the time, and we very much welcome it. We've seen 2 books come out of this distinguished panel. I think we've seen one from Dr. Martin Alike, we've seen one from Madame Joyce Mpanga. Hopefully we'll get more and have this record properly put and recorded for eternity. Ladies and gentlemen, time has moved a little bit. Your Excellency, I now want to request and invite the Permanent Secretary to come and make her remarks, and thereafter invite the Honorable Minister. Thank you.
Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda, Right Honorable Dr. Rugunda, our ex-Prime Minister, Honorable Ministers present, our elders, the distinguished panelists who have just given us very exciting stories, representatives of the diplomatic missions, particularly the British High Commissioner, private sector representatives, the academia, including our curators who put up this wonderful exhibition, staff of the ministry and its agencies, the media, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellency, let me take this opportunity to officially welcome you to the Uganda Museum. Since October 1962, when President Milton Obote opened the Independence Pavilion Gallery, which is just behind you, 60 years ago, you are the first sitting president of Uganda to visit the Uganda Museum, making this a historic moment for us as a sector. Your Excellency, this museum was established in 1908. It was the first museum in East Africa, followed by Kenya and later Tanzania. The first museum building was located at Fort Lugard, transferred to Makerere School of Fine Art, and later here to its final home in 1954. Your Excellency, the National Museum forms part of our history, and that's why we decided to mark this Uganda at 60 celebration as we memorize the past and be able to shape the future. Your Excellency, the Independence Pavilion right behind you was constructed in memory of our independence, and there is a monumental plaque of former President Milton Obote, who officiated at the opening of the exhibition. And that exhibition attracted over 163,000 international visitors to the Uganda National Museum within 3 months after that exhibition. Uganda, Your Excellency, is blessed with diverse cultures and scenic sites. As a ministry, we have documented in total 650 sites. A few of these have been developed, though not yet to international standards. Recently, Your Excellency, the 11th Parliament passed the Museums and Monuments Bill, which has addressed several challenges that had impinged the development of these sites for economic transformation. Your Excellency, for Uganda and Ugandans to easily benefit from the diverse heritage sites and culture, and to sustainably manage and develop Uganda's cultural heritage resources, the government needs to invest adequate resources in the tourism sector. Your Excellency, most of our sites are in remote areas, and if developed, communities can get jobs and earn income through other auxiliary operations, such as selling handicrafts, offering hospitality services, and agricultural produce, among others. Your Excellency, the Ministry of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities is currently implementing strategies, policies, and plans aimed at harnessing the tourism potential through diversification of tourism products and widening the product range. Today, Your Excellency, your coming to the Uganda Museum makes a big statement and gives us mileage to our sector, and we strongly believe that the Uganda Museum, especially at this time of the Uganda at 60, will receive more visitors than we have seen in the past as a result of your visit. As we recover from the COVID-19 pandemic, Your Excellency, we request that you take time off from your busy schedule and visit some of our sites. When we came to State House a few months ago, Your Excellency, the tour operators requested you to take off time and visit some of our national parks. I know you said that we should wait for the COVID, but maybe this is a reminder. But personally, I wanted to request Your Excellency that you could start with the Uganda Wildlife Conservation Education Center, popularly known as the Entebbe Zoo, which is just a stone's throw from you. And you can see what a good job we are doing in conservation education. But you could also visit a few of the other sites, and that will help us to promote both domestic and international tourism. I would like to take this time to recognize the exhibition team, particularly Professor Peterson Derrick and Dr. Kanakwa, the curators of the Independence at 60 National History Exhibition, the staff of the Department of Museums and Monuments, who have worked tirelessly to put this exhibition together. We thank you. We would also like to take this opportunity to invite our tour operators to add this museum to their itineraries and bring their clients to the National History Exhibition and the Uganda Museum at large. Your Excellency, there is a writer called Posnaske who in 1963 said that the Uganda Museum has the finest ethnographic exhibition in Africa. The ministry is working hard to refurbish the National Museum and have it expanded to fit international standards, as well as making it a must-see site in Kampala. Your Excellency, we received funding from the World Bank, a loan which you approved and under a project called Competitiveness and Enterprise Development Project. And under this project, I just wanted to remind Your Excellency that when you approved that project, because in the recent past, you're approving all loans to Uganda, and in your comments, personal comments, you said that the objectives of the project were not very clear to you, but if it is going to help us to build and upgrade our hospitality school in Jinja, then you approved it. But I would like to take this opportunity to inform Your Excellency that that project is not only going to upgrade the hospitality, the training school in Jinja, it is also going to do the Uganda Museum. We are going to expand, modernize, and digitize the museum. And we look forward to inviting you back here, maybe by the end of 2024, to commission the new museum. Your Excellency, we shall be delighted to have you in the near future commissioning a number of these projects that we are working on. I would like to thank you, Your Excellency, for taking time to be with us and waiting patiently. And I'd like to, at this point, to ask you to allow me to request the Minister of Tourism, Wildlife and Antiquities, Honorable Tom Butime, to address you and to address the congregation. Thank you.
Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda, the Right Honorable Dr. Ruhakana Rugunda, Honorable Ministers here, the High Commissioner of the United Kingdom, the PS, heads of agencies, the distinguished panelists today, ladies and gentlemen. Your Excellency, the Ministry of Tourism is delighted to host you at a time when the Museums and Monuments Bill has just been passed, and you are waiting for you to assent to that bill, then it will become law. The Uganda at 60 exhibition has come at a time when the ministry is planning to refurbish the National Museum. This is part of the sector strategy to develop a museum of international standard. And it suffices to say what the PS has already said, that the Uganda Museum here holds the finest ethnographic exhibitions in the whole of Africa. The cultures and history of this nation is kept in this national repository. Now, Your Excellency, according to UNESCO, a museum means a not-for-profit permanent institution in the service of society that researches, collects, conserves, interprets, and exhibits tangible and intangible heritage, open to the public, accessible, inclusive. Museums foster diversity and sustainability. They operate and communicate ethically, professionally, and with the participation of the communities, offering varied experiences for education, enjoyment, reflection, and knowledge sharing. That's what will be happening at this place. So, Your Excellency, the Ministry of Tourism, through the Department of Museums and Monuments, has been partnering with the University of Michigan for the last 30 years. The current collaboration has a theme, rethinking the Uganda Museum, transporting histories. As part of this project, which is also involves Makerere University History Department, the team began with Amin's exhibitions and scene archives, which attracted 20,000 domestic and international tourists in 2019 alone. This was because of the panel discussions that were live on our national television that featured the late Aggrey Awori, the National Museum was able to document the history of 1971 through Aggrey Awori's discussion, who was the director of Uganda Television at the time Idi Amin took over government. Today and this month, Ugandans memorize the year and the day the Union Jack was lowered at Kololo as a mark of freedom. The processes to attaining this freedom began as early as 1950s, and at that time there were many pro-independence movements of different groups in Buganda, Eastern, and Western Uganda. Your Excellency, you could have seen more that women also had started agitating for their rights even before independence. Once again, I would like to thank Your Excellency for your leadership. For today, Uganda is leading with a big percentage of women in leadership, in professions, in academia, and indeed they are doing very well in driving the economy. It is against this background that the Ministry of Tourism, in collaboration with the University of Michigan and Makerere University, developed this exhibition with the aim of transporting history to the public for them to cherish independence. I want to thank the exhibition team led by Professor Derek Peterson, with whom I had an opportunity to work with at the Mount of the Moon University in Fort Portal, Dr. Pamela Kanakwa from Makerere, and the staff of the museum for putting this exhibition together. I also would like to recognize the senior citizens who allowed to be interviewed and also loaned this museum their precious and historical artifacts. Allow me to recognize Mama Miria Obote, Mrs. Joyce Mpanga, the family of the late Benedict Okiwanuka, Dr. Martin Aliker, the Right Reverend Ochola, Bishop Emeritus, the Right Honorable Dr. Hakanaragunda, and the children of the families who will still be with us tomorrow as we listen and learn from them how they perceived independence at that time. I now request Your Excellency to address this congregation and the country. Asante kabisa.
The Right Honorable Dr. Gunda, Prime Minister Emeritus, the ministers, members of Parliament, members of the Diplomatic Corps, the elders who have graced this occasion, the panel, and all the invited people here. When I was going through the exhibition, Dr. Kanakwa was very busy trying to explain to me, but I told her that what you call history, I call current affairs. Although I was not in Kampala, but I was in Mbarara, following everything that was going on. So all those pictures you are showing there, I remember them very well. And of course, either I will get a cow from Dr. Kanakwa, or I will give her a cow if it turns out that I am right, that the speaker at independence or slightly before independence where the white man called something Slade. If I am right, then Dr. Kanako will give me a cow. If I'm wrong, then I will give her a cow. Have you checked what was Slade? Slade was, Joyce knows. When did Slade stop being the speaker? Slade. Joyce knows. By the time she was in the LegCo, was Slade the speaker or?
The speaker at Independence was Mr. Patel.
Narendra Patel.
Patel.
But Slade,
Your Excellency, Dr. Like disagrees.
I think the president is right.
Oh, I've got the cow. Patel was elected later. You help us, Mzee Arike, please.
Yes.
Konywa?
Yes, sir. Patel was elected later on, and when kicked out in 1972, he went and became the Speaker of the House of Queensland in Australia.
Oh, okay. So, Dr. Kanako, the cow, where? You check the... So the other man the speaker who is in the picture, is he a white man or an Indian? He's a white man. He's Slade. Slade is the one. I remember very well. Because, you know, this time, I had just turned 18 years old, but I was a very avid follower of all events that were going on in the country. So I remember everything like as if it was yesterday. Now, as you hear, the elders there were telling you aspects of the life of Uganda. And as you heard, it was a mixed story. There was a lot of anticipation and jubilation, but as Dr. Arika pointed out, there were also some simmering problems because mainly of what the NRM later came to challenge as wrong ideology of tribes, of religion, and so on. That's how eventually we got into all sorts of problems. And as you heard, many of the panelists here lived in exile. You had Bishop Ochola telling you how he lived in the Congo, how Dr. Rika ran to Kenya. Mama Miria, I was with her in Tanzania and later in Zambia. So, and you had the professionals like Dr. Olweny, how he spent a lot of time working outside. You heard him, what he was working in Australia, in those places, because the situation here was not good. So it's good that you had Dr. Alika talking of people without shoes on Kampala Road. You'd find people walking without shoes. You had Bishop Ochola telling you that there was an unfair division of labor where Uganda was to produce cash crops and the North was to produce soldiers for the colonial army. Those reflections are important for you, the young people, to really pick up properly. Then you heard how there was not a single secondary school in the North. And I know this because even in my time, by the time I came to S1, Ntare, 1961, there were only about 6 A-level schools in the whole of Uganda. You had about, Professor Wen was talking about it, he was talked, but by 61, there was Bodo, Kisubi, Ntare. I did not know about the Indian school he talked about in Mbare. I did not know about it. Gayaza, Namagunga, and somebody told me of Nabingo, but me, I did not remember that. These were the only A-level schools in the whole of Uganda by 1961, just before independence. So there were so many problems that the independent country of Uganda started with. But in the 70 years we were with the British, there were also some benefits. The introduction of modern education, although small, you had what Dr. Orange said. Even us, by that time, who had started going into the educational system, by coincidence, my aunt, who is your permanent secretary in the ministry, Katsime, she has got an interesting story which should be put in the museum here also, because she's a permanent secretary for museum. Her father, actually, no, her grandfather, Aron Muhinda, was rescued by the British in Mombasa, where he had been taken as a slave. He had been captured as a slave. The grandfather of your peers here in Mombasa. She's from my mother's clan, but I think she needs to tell us the story how he got captured and taken to Mombasa and was freed there by the British. And when he got free, he married another Munyoro girl who had also been kidnapped and taken to Mombasa. And they produced a boy called Cook. Cook, you can hear Cook, after Albert Cook, the other doctor. And that Cook is the father of Katsime here. So there you have got a very important museum. So there were definitely advantages being exposed to the British, to the Europeans. Now, I tend to blame our indigenous leaders. These leaders were not waking up because these foreigners, because what they call the tribes here, are essentially similar groups. If you go to the north, you will find our Luo people. They are all Luo people. They are all connected. They are Lur, the Acholi, the Rangi, the Kumam, the Japadora, the Ru in Kenya, the ones in South Sudan. They are the same people. The ones in Congo. And here, the Bantu people here, especially these Bantus near the lakes, they actually speak one language, but with different dialects. But the problem was that our egocentric kings and chiefs were emphasizing parochialism instead of looking for the similarities among our people. This is where I don't agree with the traditionalist groups. Because when you look at all what, especially like what they call the interlacustrine Bantu, they're just one language. So I don't know whether your museum will also bring out that aspect. Because when you say ethnography, to emphasize the separateness rather than the commonality, I have a problem with that approach. Because like recently, I have been telling you the slogan, Okorra Echida Kyonka, a translation for subsistence farming. I got this from the Bagwere of Parisa, Budaka. They're the ones who speak like that. Because when I was talking of looking at subsistence farming, subsistence, working only for the stomach in Rinyankore, they say Okora Endayonka in Rinyankore. But when I went to, so all the way from Bachiga, Batoro, Banyoro, all this Balamoji, all the way to Budaka, you can imagine, you can see the distance. And through Tanzania, Buhaya, up to almost near Mwanza. Even Rwanda and Burundi, they would change a little bit. Okore Inda Yonyine, they would change a little bit. But I liked the Bagwere version because they really made fun of the whole thing by saying Okore Echida Kyonka. So this is the one I prefer. Okore Echida Kyonka. So this is one language, but spoken slightly differently and there. But you find these traditional the old groups emphasizing the separateness of our people rather than the commonalities. Now, when you go to Germany, I am told that the German, which was written by Martin Luther in the Bible, was the German of Saxony. I think Martin Luther was coming from Saxony. And when you ask the Germans of Bavaria, they say, we can't understand what that German is unless you learn it. But here, even without learning Uganda, when Bishop Leslie Brown came to preach in Ntungamo, my church, in 1954, he was speaking in Uganda. And he said, Bulumunti ene chasiga, chichapungula. I could understand, I was in P2. But I could understand, oh, that's how the Waganda call Okusiga, Okubiba. In Rinyankwere, Baganda call it Okusiga. The word Okusiga is also there in Rinyankwere, but it is used for petitioning the traditional gods. You go and present your issues to the spirits, and then they answer you. That's what they call Okusiga, to present your... So I could straight away understand what Bishop Brown was saying, although I had never heard anybody speaking in Uganda. So therefore, our NRM point of view is that no, yes, it is good to remember this, the history, but we must transcend the parochialist point of view, because our prosperity will be served better by integration rather than emphasizing the parochialism. So therefore, I'm very happy I want to thank the Professor Patterson or Peterson? Petero. Yeah, Peterono. Oh. So I want to thank Professor Peterson and Dr. Kanakwa for unearthing this heritage, because these communities here are really powerful communities. Our only problem was governance. If you look at people like those Banyankore, very powerful group. We have got everything. I keep telling you that I'm 78 now, a bit junior to the elders there, but also not to be neglected in terms of biological progression. But I eat only African foods. I never eat, I don't eat bread because I'm not a European. I don't eat rice because I'm not an Indian. I eat our foods. Akaro, millet, muhogo. The only non-Ugandan food I eat is Irish potatoes, obumonde. Obumondobo, those obumonde, I eat them because they have got low starch. They are not as starch. I eat them. I eat a little bit one at night because I don't want too much starch at night. Then I eat our other indigenous, the vegetables and so on. So, like food, we have got every type of food here. Fish, sweet potatoes, all those foods, they were indigenous here. Medicine, so on. So our only problem was always with the governance, the chiefs not waking up. Okay, when we were alone, without external pressures, maybe they didn't understand the importance. After all, the population was not so big, so these kingdoms were self-sufficient in what they needed. But when we were exposed to the foreigners who came, because the exposure of Africa started with the fall of Constantinople to the Turkish in 1453, when the Ottoman Turks captured Constantinople and cut off Western Europe from the east, from China and India, from the Silk Road, they were calling it. You have heard the Chinese president talking about the Silk Road these days. That trade route from east to west, founded by Marco Polo some centuries before, was cut when the Ottoman Turks took over Constantinople, what they call now Istanbul. That's when the Europeans now started looking for another route to the east, the sea route, led by the Portuguese. And you can see it didn't take long. 1453, the Ottoman Turks take over Istanbul. By 1482, the Portuguese were where Angola is. A man called Diego Cama, a Portuguese. By 1487, a Portuguese man called Bartholomew Diaz got to the Cape of Good Hope. That's why they call it the Cape of Good Hope. They saw the African coast going north. Then they knew that They were about to go around the continent. And 1498, Vasco da Gama went around the Cape and landed at Natal on Christmas Day. That's why they called that place Natal, Nativity in Latin. Now, from that time, the Europeans started coming along our coast. This should have woken up the chiefs to wake up and say, no, we better get together to protect ourselves. But they didn't. Instead, just full of egoism. Until Huntington's Peak gets here, 1862. This is almost 400 years from the time of Vasco da Gama. And me, from the clans of here, because I am from one of the most ancient clans here, we have the stories we are coming that people, some strong people are coming from abroad. There was even a prophet called Kakarakashagama from Karagwe, from Tanzania, who was prophesying that you people, if you don't wake up, this land will be taken by foreigners. He was prophesying, that man from Tanzania, from Karagwe. But anyway, it's good that we have survived all those problems. We are now here. It's good that we capture this heritage, but capture it also with a progressive angle, not just a frozen way. Among the people who expose the history are the archaeologists. Katsushime talked of Professor Posnaske. I don't know whether he's still alive. He used to come here. He used to come some time ago. But there are others, like our teacher at the University of Dar es Salaam, Dr. Sutton. How do you pronounce it? Is it Sutton or Sutton or what? Sutton. This is the problem with the English. They write U, they say A. Where is the A now? That's where the Bantu dialects are very clear. The way you speak it, the way you write. But the English, SU. Then SA, where is the Saturn now? I don't see it here. So that Dr. Sutton wrote a good piece after they did the work at Begobia Mjini and Tutsi, which I like very much. And I want to engage those archaeologists because you could see that they have some information, but it's not enough because they don't know our culture. They don't know. For instance, one of the pieces I read, I think it was written by Sutton, saying that when they dug up the bones of the cows at either Tutsi or Vigo, that they found that all these bones were of young calves. So according to the European mind, they said, oh, this must be a ritual, a religious ritual. Because why were they only slaughtering young cows? They don't, this is because they don't know our culture. And the people they were interacting with could not tell them. But among those groups, we don't eat adult cows. It is a sacrilege to eat an adult cow. You don't slaughter a cow. Cows are not for slaughtering. But we slaughter young bull calves because we don't need them. Somebody like Tumsim there would tell you it is called Octarian Tramutwe. You prefer the female calves, a nyana. So if the cow produces a numi, a bull calf, you kill it and eat it so that the mother, you see the English don't have enough words. They say dries up. when the cow stops milking, they say it has dried up. Dried up. But for us, of course, we have got more words. It's called okweisa, so that the mother stops producing milk and therefore conceives again to bring another calf. So, but I really liked the work of Dr. Sutton, and I want to engage those archaeologists so that we can interpret that information with our own local knowledge which we have here. So I thank everybody involved. Thank you so much. I thank the elders. The elders have really entertained you people, the young people. I think this is hilarious. You have heard what they were all saying. It's like a film they were telling you. Mama Miria, Joyce, you see how they were really adventurous in all these areas. And Dr. Alika told you how the girls were going around and not asking too many questions. So I think it's very good to capture these stories because these are live libraries here. And I'm also a junior. I'm also a junior library, not as senior as these ones, but also a junior one. But I must tell you about how Dr. Alika gave me a nice lunch in Nairobi. Because when he ran from here, he went to Nairobi and he opened a dental clinic there. So in our fight against Idi Amin, somehow one day I linked up with him, I don't know through whom, together with a Tanzanian army officer who was working with me underground to coming here and going back. He gave us a very nice lunch in one of those places in Nairobi. So I congratulate everybody. Thank you for taking this Rubimbi, or Rubimbi. How do you say it in English now? Huh? Kanakwa, you come and translate in the 6 over. Who translates Orbimbi?
Your Excellency, I would take that to mean task.
Task?
Task, yes.
Who can try better than Kanakwa? Ani asobola okukyusa olubimbi abanyankole call it orugezi, in Acholi they call it katara. Who can translate it? Because task kale kiremye katukireke. But anyway, it is this is when in our traditional setting, when we are cultivating, each one takes his or her line of responsibility. I have my Rubimbi, we are abreast. I have mine, you have yours, and each one cultivates his portion, the assignment, you can call it assignment or something like that. So this Rubimbi, of course, some of us are busy with other Mimbis. We are busy with other things, economy, Corona, Ebola, all these. Now, somebody to remember that, no, we must this Rubimbi should not be forgotten. I thank you so much, and I salute you, because definitely, if you had not remembered this Rubimbi, I think we could have lost a lot of resources, of information. And those sources you are talking about, they are very rich sources, the pictures, the what. How about the 1940s? Because my father told me that the British used to come and make films in the villages, but I never, where are they, those films of the 1940s? We are talking of 1950s, 60s. How about the 1940s? What happened to them? The archives people. The 1940s, 30s, and you have many of you.
Your Excellency, Derek should be able to speak to this, Derek Peterson. But Your Excellency, as he walks to the mic, he also came to me and whispered that the speaker wasn't actually Mr. Slane. But he will also tell us who the speaker at Independence was. Because he says the speaker Slane was actually the speaker in Kenya, not here.
Oh,
Yeah, that's right, Your Excellency.
Oh, but I have lost my cow.
No. No, I'm happy to say, Your Excellency, that the Uganda Broadcasting Corporation has a very impressive cinema archive that we're currently working to digitize, including films from the 1950s and 60s, which we hope to be available soon. In fact, there's a film...
50s and the 40s, 30s?
40s and 30s, most of those live in British archives in Getty or Reuters. We've been able to use some of them for a special film that the audience here watched while we were awaiting your arrival.
They are there in the UK?
They're in the UK, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And who was the speaker? Please help me.
What's that? Griffin. The name was John Griffin, Your Excellency.
Griffin. The Slane is one of Kenya. I have lost my cow from... Thank you so much, and I congratulate everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me once again in appreciating His Excellency the President for that very visionary talk and directional thoughts in setting the tone for this important occasion as we celebrate Uganda at 60. Your Excellency, we marvel at your recollection of history and the facts of the world and Uganda, though I think the cow has gone. But we marvel at that greatly. Thank you so much. We thank you once again for gracing this important occasion, recounting the history and events of the time. We believe it will reawaken the sense of common identity and foster unity as we celebrate Uganda at 60. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the close of this event, and I would like to invite you to stand as we take on the anthems, and thereafter we will have a small photo session. I think the protocol will guide us on how that will work. The anthems, please. Thank you. Thank you once again. His Excellency has gone to say hello to the distinguished panelists, our elders, and they will have a photo session there. Thereafter, he will depart. His Excellency is having an interaction with our elders, and they are taking a photo moment with our distinguished panelists, the elders, senior leaders who have graced this event and recounted the history of that time. Okay. Thank you. who has just graced this occasion and is shortly departing the venue. His Excellency the President is leaving the venue, and we thank him so much for having graced this event. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you once again for being at this launch of Uganda at 60, the historical recollections and exhibitions of our national history. We do have some refreshments. I know it